So let's go back to NBC News senior legal correspondent Laura Jarrett on the phone. Laura, we got this note. A judge has resentenced brothers 50 years to life, eligible for parole. It looks like this is on murder, right? So Danny was just talking about the timeline here and the big question mark over the timeline, given how fast we saw things move today. What are the possibilities that you see here going forward?
Right. So now that the judge has resentenced them to something that makes them parole eligible, Gotti, that's going to set off a whole new process here where now it's going to move to the parole board to decide. And the parole board is going to take weeks to do this. They have over 100 days if they want to review the file, and they may not be nearly as up to speed as this judge was, or they can take less if they want to. But now the parole board is going to get to decide what to do here. And it's a panel of people, and they're going to be able to figure out what they think should happen. At that point, Gotti, the parole board will make a recommendation about what should happen. After that, we're still not done yet, because then at that point, Governor Newsom gets a chance to weigh in. And he then has at least 2 months, if he wants, to take his time and decide what to do there. If he does nothing, Gotti, and he decides, you know what, I'm just going to say nothing, and I'm going to let the parole board decide what to do here and just let that decision hold, then it could be that they get out, in let's call it 100 days from now. But it's gonna need to go through that process, and that's why it's not going to be that they're just walking free, immediately. This is going to now take a little bit more time, and it's still going to be sort of a long road here while the parole board gets a chance to review the file, and then Governor Newsom gets a chance to weigh in if he wants. And I say if he wants, because he might decide, you know what, a judge has now weighed in, a parole board has weighed in, I'm going to just do nothing, in which case the parole board's decision holds.
Yeah, and I hate to make the California observation, but the last DA, when he broached this, and we saw it in the headlines over and over and over again, and now looking at this timeline that could go as long as the elected people in office want it to, a parole board wants it to. It does seem like it's going to be quite some time. We just saw some family members come out of the courtroom. They are in tears. On one hand, this does look like it is pushing it down the road. Does not look like it was the ruling that Garagos and the brothers were hoping for today. But what are there? Is this a victory for the family in a limited sense?
Yes.
Is this disappointment? Take us through where things stand legally.
I think by any measure, this is really all they could have asked for. Yes, we had heard Mark Garagos, their defense attorney, talking about, they could be sentenced to manslaughter and they could get out tomorrow. That was always a huge long shot. Everybody who had looked at this carefully and had thought about what the realistic possibility thought what the judge has done today was the likely scenario. If he was going to agree with them, he was going to give them something that would make them parole eligible. He was not going to give them manslaughter after committing murder. And he recognized, the judge did, the seriousness and the gravity of what they were charged with. And I think sentencing them to something that would have had them walk today was not the possibility that anyone really thought was realistic. Instead, what he's done has given them an opportunity towards freedom, and certainly the clearest path towards freedom, right? Remember, we had talked many times over the last couple months about all of the different avenues and all of the different scenarios. This really is probably the best case scenario for the Menendez brothers and their family members that they could have hoped for, at least the one that was most realistic and the one that puts them on a path towards getting out.
And we heard Camila talking about a little bit about those statements. Lyle Menendez's in particular, and a couple things stick out to me. One, that he apologized, walked through what happened, how he was feeling that day, but he also seemed to apologize for things like making a mockery of the justice system, kind of addressing head on a lot of the criticisms that we've seen from DA Hochman and the prosecutors in the past. Do you think that made a difference? Was the judge's mind probably already made up? And will those types of apologies work with the parole board down the road?
It certainly can't hurt them with the parole board because, again, even if the judge knew what he wanted to do going in there today, Gotti, and he was well read in, the parole board may not be as sort of well-versed in all of this. And I think anything that they can do to set a record that suggests they are acknowledging the severity of their crimes, they're taking responsibility for the severity of what they did, they're owning up to it, all of the sort of rebutting that they can do ahead of time to sort of combat some of the allegations that the DA, Nathan Hochman, made about them. They have to be imagining that the parole board is listening. They have to be imagining that Governor Newsom is listening, right? And they have to be sort of having an ear towards all of these different audiences. Even if today was just about convincing Judge Jessic, they know they have all of these other ears that are out there that they have to get on board with. And anything I think that they can do to combat the idea that they haven't fully appreciated all of the lies and that they haven't really acknowledged the severity, anything they can do to combat that, I think that has to inure to their benefit in some way.
And Laura, one final question before we let you go, and again, thank you. People are going to be tuning in, and they're going to be wondering, okay, but like, how long are we going to have to wait before we have a final decision? Just ballpark, if you would. Your educated guess is better than anybody else's out there. Are we talking months here? Are we talking by the summer, this year? What does your gut tell you?
I think given the timeline and how long the parole board, again, has more than 100 days to sort of take this in and weigh the evidence and sift through things and be careful and really take a hard look at this. I think best case scenario for them, we're talking a couple months. We're not talking days. We're not talking weeks. I think that's the best case scenario for them. Again, remember their attorney said they were going to get out by Thanksgiving, and we're now approaching Memorial Day. So you can tell these things take a while. There's delays. And we should also mention there is that risk assessment that's still hanging out there. So Governor Newsom is a part of this process. When he was called on to give them clemency, said, you know what? I hear you. You want clemency. I'm going to decide to let the parole board, who has psychologists, take a look at this and give me a risk assessment of their dangerousness. There is stuff in that risk assessment we still have not seen, Gotti. It was under seal. It's been largely redacted. Some of it has come out and trickled out in court proceedings, and it's not good for them. And so the parole board is going to have the benefit of that. And I don't know what they're going to do with that. And again, they're going to have to make their own independent judgment, separate and apart from this one judge today, about what they think that means and what they think their level of dangerousness is to the community, right? So even though they were charged with murdering their parents, if the parole board thinks that they have a propensity towards violence and that they are still a threat to the community, a parole board might take that seriously. And so I don't think we should just discount the fact that there is that lingering report out there, and we haven't seen everything it says.
Laura Jarrett, thank you so much for the gut check there. What we're watching right now, these are live pictures in front of the L.A. County Courthouse. That is Mark Geragos hugging family members. We're waiting to see if they may make a statement to the public. A lot of cameras out there in front of the courthouse. Camila Bernal is right there as well. This is all happening behind her. We've got another camera with Camila. Camila, if you could kind of walk us through, it looks like Geragos is walking up to a podium with a bunch of microphones. So we may take him. I'm not exactly sure if there are prepared statements or not, but the family there hugging each other. It looks like they're smiling. This is not the best possible outcome that they could have hoped for. And yet this is, as we were just hearing from Laura, somewhat of a victory. She was characterizing it as one of the best possible outcomes in this case legally. Again, the judge resentencing the brothers to 50 years with the possibility of parole. In fact, looks like Mark Geragos is speaking right now, so let's listen in.
This month, actually, 2 years ago, and I don't know where Cliff went, but there he is. Hold on. Come here, Cliff. Come here. Only when Cliff gets up here.
Hey, guys.
Cliff Gardner. 2 years ago, Cliff and I were talking about another case, and he mentioned the Menendez brothers, and it was a case that I obviously had followed. And he said he had prepared and he was about to file a pro per, believe it or not, writ of habeas corpus. 2 years ago, I said, well, you know what, Cliff, we talked about it. We enjoy working together, now have an undefeated record, continue to have, and we decided let's do it. I don't think he, who does nothing but post-conviction work, or me, who I hate doing post-conviction work, ever thought 2 years later we'd be standing here after 35 years with this wonderful family who I've grown to love like my own family. And now we see the pot at the end of the rainbow, so to speak, or their freedom. I want to do a hat tip to Judge Jessic, who was able to cancel out all the noise surrounding this, all of the grandstanding, all of the political back and forth. And he did what the code section said he should do. He did what justice said should happen. And he struck the special circumstance, and he sentenced them to 50 to life, which means they're immediately eligible. There's for those who don't know, in a couple of weeks, there is already a clemency hearing set. There's also a response due in the habeas next month? Yes. Next month. And so all bets are still on. The resentencing has happened. I actually made a call. First call I made was to Leslie Abramson. I couldn't get a hold of Leslie. It went straight to voicemail. I have long admired Leslie. I think about her often in this courthouse, actually, because one of the last trials she did was in this courthouse. She did say something a number of years ago that no amount of TikTokers was going to ever change anything. And so I was calling to tease her. And so, Leslie, I will tell you, it's a whole different world we live in now. And one of the things that I think is important is to recognize that, like the legislature has done, we have evolved. This is not the 90s anymore. We have a more robust understanding of a lot of things. And I hat tip to the family, and I'll let them, after we answer a couple of questions, speak about what this means to them. I just know that on a day like today, that redemption is possible. And to those, you saw X-rated talk today, you saw kind of the ridiculous nature of the cross-examination. You can turn anything on its head. The fact is, the Menendez brothers have done remarkable work, and today is a great day after 35 years.
Did you talk to Erik and Lyle really quick after this? What's the reaction?
I told them to call me on their burner phone.
Are you disappointed that you guys now have to face the parole board instead of them walking free tonight? You're a little
I argued, and I still believe that they should be out.
Who argued? What's your name?
Mark Garrigus. How are you? Hi. So I understand what's happening. The governor would only have that ability constitutionally if the parole board does it. Right now, what is pending is, because it's 50 to life, they're immediately eligible. The first thing that is set is the clemency hearing, which is, I believe, on June 13th. So the clemency board, and this is something new, will make a recommendation to the governor, and then the governor will take action either before or after. So, yes, Jim.
Around Thanksgiving, you said, I want them to be home by then, and people said that's never going to happen. You said they will be resentenced. This is a huge victory for you and for the family, clearly. What do you think a realistic timeline is now to finally see freedom for the brothers?
I've said ever since my failed prediction of Thanksgiving dinner that 2025 would be their year. I mean, they got caught, ironically, they've been caught in politics 30 years ago in a DA's race. They got caught in politics now in 2024. And I'm hopeful now that Judge Jessic did what he was supposed to do. And I'm hopeful that now that the right thing will be done and they'll walk out. You know, they've got a family, and I think the takeaway for me today was that the family, this has become, their trauma has become kind of the subject of prurient interest. But they are a real family, real people who have lived through unimaginable horrors. And I'm hopeful and glad that we're one huge step closer to bringing the boys home. Thanks. Yes.
Are you concerned about that this could get held up on an appeal if the DA's office files an appeal?
No, I'm not concerned with that. I think at this point, the record is such that the code section calls for this. This was from my mind, this was the minimum that they should get. It also, somebody mentioned this to me in the courtroom just now. This is a decision that I think will reverberate in the criminal justice system. One of the things that we have argued all along, and what the judge said today, the judge commented today, this is one of the most remarkable, and he used that term, remarkable transformations. And he said, while the crime was truly horrific and remarkable, the 35 years since, what they have accomplished is remarkable, with no hope. And we've said that since day one. And so with no hope, this encourages people who are incarcerated to make the right decisions, to take the right path. So it's just a win-win on so many levels. And I will let the family talk. I could not. Yes.
Joan, I know you've been close with Joan.
I have not talked yet to Joan, but I'm hoping. I'll let the family say that. I'll let the family say that.
I need to smoke a cigarette. Mark, do you have a fucking lighter?
Hi, everyone.
Mark,
This is a good day.
It's Mr. Hochman's PR person.
Mark.
No, can you do me a favor? No, I don't have a lighter. He does right there. Right. You're welcome. Mr. Hochman does. He's right over there. He's hiding in the bushes.
We have a lot of thank yous today from the family. Mark Garagos, Cliff Gardner.
You're going to call me in 3 minutes?
Thank you so much. You have brought hope to this family that we didn't see coming.
You know, we would be remiss if I didn't thank Alexandra Kazarian, my partner who's here behind me. If I didn't thank Milena Blake and Mike Romano. There's Milena back there. I apologize for Milena. It's got to be tough to sit at a council table and have me there kind of bulldoze my way through. So I said I thank X-Rated for having to subject himself to that brutality. But most of all for the family. I just couldn't be happier for you guys. It really is tremendous. Thank you. Talk to them.
This is the step in the right direction, but is there any more your hesitation at all about the brothers taking the parole board?
Okay, yes. So, right, this is a step towards the parole process. Of course, June 13th, they will meet with the parole board. And, you know, in the state of California, it's a pretty stringent process. So we are very hopeful. I thanked Mark. I thanked Cliff. There's an entire legal team. But ultimately, we are here today with this result because of Erik and Lyle, because they chose to live their lives with clarity and a purpose of service that the judge was impressed by. And so a huge thanks to them, too, for being the kind of people that we could bring home.
What was it like to hear that? What was it like for you to hear the brothers speak in their own words and say in no uncertain terms what they did was wrong, that they blamed no one but themselves, and they asked for forgiveness, and they thanked the family, and they embraced you with love?
It was very moving. I think everybody in the courtroom was moved by that. They've said those words to me personally before. That was not the first time that I had heard them take full accountability for their actions, for the effect that it had on my life, and express that. So I'm glad everyone else got to hear it. I haven't talked to them yet. Yes. I couldn't really see. I mean, they're on a screen, so I couldn't really see facial reactions, but I imagine that they will be pleased from today. Yes, so for my Spanish-speaking reporters, you have a treat today, which is my cousin Marta is going to follow me, and she is going to speak to you in Spanish. So you'll get the full thing and answer questions as well for anyone who is talking and speak. And what's next? Well, we still have, we have to go through the parole process, which is going to be very difficult for the family. That is a difficult process for the family to go through. We were certainly hoping for manslaughter, time served, so that we wouldn't have to go through this process, but we will eagerly step through those doors if that means getting them home. So also I want to say thank you before I forget to Judge Jessic for being fair, for reading the law as it was written. Like Mark said, for not getting caught up in the drama of the situation, but for simply applying the law. So grateful to him as well. I am so happy that I wore waterproof mascara is how I'm feeling, because I have been crying all day long. So these are tears of joy for sure, and we're very excited. Yeah. Thank you.
And we're hearing from the Menendez family that are reacting to the resentencing from the judge here in Los Angeles. They are now facing, the Menendez brothers have been resentenced to 50 years to life in prison with the possibility of paroles. Let's bring in NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalas. Danny, this is, look, I got to say, from a layman's perspective, looking at the headlines, seeing the celebration from the family, and then reading a headline that says resentenced to 50 years to life in prison with the possibility of parole, and then knowing that they've only served 35 years legally, like how is this a victory? How do you explain that?
Because they're immediately eligible for parole. And while that may take a long time, it may take, weeks, months, the reality is that even though Mark Geragos was asking for a resentencing of manslaughter, that was always a long shot. But you ask high, you make a highball demand, and then you get to the middle, hopefully, with that demand. And it was a long shot, and lawyers make those kinds of long shot requests all the time. This is a victory. They still have two other paths. You heard Mark talking about their two other paths. There are really three paths. One was this resentencing. The other is what's called a habeas petition. And there's a hearing coming up, I think, next month in that one. And that is actually the most common of all of these procedures that the Menendez brothers are pursuing. And by that, I mean, I filed a number of habeas petitions. Criminal defense attorneys do it all the time. Pro se defendants do it all the time. Not uncommon to be filing a habeas petition. Somewhat more uncommon on their bases, which was newly discovered evidence, because it's not that often that there really is truly newly discovered evidence. We defense attorneys try to crowbar something into newly discovered evidence, but judges really don't see that as much as your garden variety ineffective assistance of counsel claim. So you have the habeas petition, and then you have the resentencing, which is, we'll put that in the middle range unusual category. But thanks to a new law in California, and also thanks to the Supreme Court's several years ago now pronouncing that automatic life without parole sentences for juveniles, and they weren't juveniles at the time of the crime, but inspired by that, California passed a law that allowed, and I believe it's 25 and under, and I believe the brothers were 25 and under when they were at the time of the crime. That allows them to get this this opportunity to get resentenced. You'll recall that the DA and the court were both asking for a resentencing. The DA withdrew it, and the court decided to go forward sua sponte on its own. Again, not that common. Probably the least common, or I'll say the biggest long shot, is the third avenue, which is a request for clemency from the governor. And then you get into a political discussion. What is Gavin Newsom going to do with this request for clemency? He may determine that from a political standpoint, he can stay out of it now because the brothers do have a path to getting out. It's a path through the parole board, but it's a path nonetheless.
And Danny, real fast, we just heard Mark Geragos, who, I mean, you saw it on full display. He's a very accomplished lawyer here in Los Angeles, very charismatic, and he's putting on a show there, and this seems very much like a victory. But is this truly a victory? Like, what does your gut tell you about how things are going in terms of the brothers getting out this year?
It is a victory. I mean, it's not the best outcome. It's not what their most hopeful thing that they wanted, but those were long shots. This was more in the range of something they could expect to happen. And this resentencing, I mean, you can imagine what they were thinking. They thought they were, maybe 6 months ago, they thought this was a layup. This was going to be easy. Then the new DA comes in, and he's imposing the resentencing. So now they're thinking, oh my gosh, this is never going to happen. And, look, I mean, a lot of folks don't have sympathy for them. I'm not saying that I'm not saying they're sympathetic characters. In fact, I feel like I'm one of the few voices that remembers this original trial.
Yes.
And if you can believe it, they were tried right around the same time, within months of O.J. Simpson. And if you can believe it, at the time, O.J. Simpson was seen as a more sympathetic defendant than the Menendez brothers. And the reason I say that is that O.J. Simpson was at least a whodunit. There was about half the country divided that thought he did it or he didn't do it. Meanwhile, the Menendez brothers, there was 0.0 question that not only that they did it, but that they eluded capture, that they deceived the police, and they went on a spending spree after shooting both of their parents to death and lying to police about it. So at the time, they weren't exactly the most sympathetic characters, and maybe part of that remains with me today. Although society has evolved its views on things like child abuse and how that can affect your behavior. But to that, I would say I've got a lot of clients who have had horrific stories, including child abuse. So if the Menendez brothers are eligible, then I guess maybe we're seeing a whole new dawn. Or what I think is more likely, it's just because they're infamous defendants.
Yeah, as Geragos was saying, maybe TikTokers can have an influence in the judicial process. At least he seemed to be implying that. Interesting case for sure. Danny Savalas, thank you so much. Dana Griffin has been covering this hearing all day long. She joins us right now in front of the courthouse. I believe, Dana, while we were trying to figure out what was going on inside the courthouse, you were actually in the courtroom. What can you tell us about what happened?
Yeah, so Gotti, I was in the overflow room where we have a video monitor to see what was happening inside the court and also to see the brothers who were live streaming from Donovan Prison in San Diego. And it was a very kind of shocking moment. I mean, you could hear a pin drop in the room as the judge allowed Lyle and Erik to both speak. They apologized to family. At one time, Lyle was emotional. They took full accountability, saying that what they did was wrong. They admitted to killing both their mom and dad, and they say that there is absolutely no excuse for it. So I want to bring you into what we're experiencing outside of court. You can see just a sea of media right now, and the family, the Menendez family, is at the podium speaking right now. That is Diane Hernandez. She is one of the cousins who testified earlier today. At one point, she turned to the judge and asked for mercy when it came to resentencing the brothers. And even the judge says that these were shocking, horrible crimes. But he says the one thing that maybe shocked him even more was the amount of support, not only from the family, but from the prison officials, including one lieutenant who says in the 25 years he has worked, he has never once written a letter of support for an inmate. So it just shows the gravity of how much these brothers are supported, not just by their family, but for the people who have been watching them for years and have seen the strides they have made toward rehabilitation. Now, just because the judge has resentenced them, by the way, 50 years to life, which essentially 50 years to life, which essentially downgrades from their current system or their current sentence of life without the possibility of parole. Now, this whole decision goes into the hands of the parole board and then Governor Gavin Newsom. This could be a months-long process. The parole board will look at their insight and see if they have fully been rehabilitated. They will make a recommendation to Governor Gavin Newsom, and Gotti, it is ultimately his decision on what happens to the brothers next. But just a moment ago, we heard the family say that they are elated. One of the cousins said she's glad she wore waterproof mascara because it has been such an emotional day, and she was just overjoyed. Gotti?
Yeah, quite the scene that we're seeing play out there at the courthouse as the family of the Menendez brothers comes out, address the public for the first time since the judge made that resentencing decision today. 50 years to life with the possibility of parole. Again, that is very different than what they were facing before.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.